This is the Knowledge Graph Insights podcast, episode number 27. Some experts describe the marketing concept of branding as what people say about you after you've left the room. It's the memories they form of your company that define your brand. Andrea Volpini sees this same dynamic unfolding as companies turn their attention to AI. To build a memorable brand online, modern marketers need to understand both how human and machine memory work, and then focus on creating memories that align with how AI systems understand the world.
Welcome to the Knowledge Graph Insights podcast, where experts on knowledge graphs and the semantic web share their wisdom with the digital and business communities. Our mission is to demystify and democratize knowledge graph technology and practices to make the benefits of knowledge graphs and semantic technology accessible to all. And now, here's your host, Larry Swanson.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode number 27 of the Knowledge Graph Insights podcast. I am really delighted today to welcome to the show Andrea Volpini. Andrea is the CEO and the founder at WordLift, a company based in Rome. Tell the folks a little bit more about WordLift and what you're up to these days, Andrea.
Yeah, so we build knowledge graphs and to help brands automate their SEO and marketing efforts using large language model and AI in general.
Nice. Yeah, and you're pretty good at this. You've been doing this a while, and you had a recent success story, I think, that really highlights some of your current interests in your current work. Tell me about your talk in Milan and the little demonstration you did with that.
Yeah. So it was last week at AI Festival, which is a very large event with I would say hundreds of speakers. And my talk was about memory as a new framework for marketing in the age of AI assistant. And so I did a small test with the audience, and imagine we had a crowd of maybe 40, 60 people attending the talk, and then a few others online. And I had this slide where I challenged the audience to program the memory of Grok. Grok is X AI system, and I wanted to do this with Grok and ChatGPT by asking the audience to share feedback about my talks. The talks was ready towards the end, and so I asked, okay, just share openly on X and Facebook about how was this talk, and then we set up a small poll on X to let people simply vote if it was good or bad or relevant or boring. And so we created engagement over social, and of course, particularly because I'm still one of the few left on X. I was we interacted on X. And then all of a sudden, maybe after just a few minutes, one of my colleague went on Grok and asked, what are the best talks at AI Festival 2025? And you can imagine, there are hundreds of speakers, but, Grok responded, one highlight is a side-branding presentation that talked about using, memory with AI system. And one of the attendees described it as mesmerizing. So suggesting that, he explored neuroscience and blah, blah, blah. So I was able to get there and to build memory collectively by having, users share, feedback on social network. And by the way, the same applied to ChatGPT. So asking the same to ChatGPT would also highlighted my talk versus many others better talks on that day.
That's really one of the common observations and criticisms of LLMs has been their inability to access real-time information. Like you build the model and there it is. So there's obviously something going on under there. You're one of the first people I've talked to who talks a lot about memory in these architectures. I guess maybe if you could, I mean, there's so much going on in the last couple of years with this, but what have been the evolutions in the kind of the AI and LLM sphere that kind of have led to this, like to the emerging importance of memory in these architectures?
Right. So, I mean, I think all of us are realizing with daily use that we're not interacting with language models anymore, but we are interacting with more complex systems that take into account multiple pieces in order to provide an accurate response. And every system, whether we're dealing with Perplexity, ChatGPT, or Gemini or Grok, has its own different way of combining information in order to respond to us. And so I started, because of my work in marketing, I started to think how we should approach a customer that it's becoming an AI. And then that was kind of my trigger, was like, okay, what if the next customer is not a human? What happens? And so the first consideration to be made is that in the context of SEO, for example, we transition after a few years from the idea of keywords and focusing on what are the keywords that I should rank for, to focusing on the search intent of the user that makes a request to a search engine. But then all of these is gone if I have to deal with ChatGPT deep search. All of these disappear if I have to deal with something like Operator or Gemini deep research functionality, because in the end there's not going to be a human that it's making the request, but it's going to be an agent. And so I started to think, okay, what is marketing then? If keywords are gone and also search intents is gone, what is left? What influenced the systems? And then I got to the revelation of memory.
Okay, that's really the way that evolution you just described too. The one thing that occurred to me as you were talking about that is that ostensibly Google has always favored like that if you're doing things that appeal to human beings, you'll rank better in the search engines. But it sounds like from what you're saying, and so that kind of guided SEO for like the last, I don't know, 15,
Right.
20 years. But now you're saying we've kind of switched to where, and so I think a lot of SEOs, like the perception was they were just playing to Google, to trying to game Google's algorithms. But and it's not like gaming, but it's understanding your audience. It's like any old communication problem, like understanding your audience. So what are you seeing as the difference as you make that leap from search intent to memory, needs of these new like deep research and tools like that? How do you like, and your end goal in this is to automate marketing tasks. What does that look like? What's the like pipelines or procedures or your
Right.
approach to that? Yeah.
So I started from building our system for our client to, let's say, improve the quality of content recommendation on an e-commerce website, or increasing the quality of internal links. And doing that at scale required an agentic approach. So there is a language model driven agent that has to find relevant pages, and then has to have the notion of what is a main query for these pages, and then has to kind of learn how to craft a proper anchor text in order to link one page to a relevant other page. So as I was doing this development, I realized that the essence wasn't really the model itself, that of course has its own characteristics and biases, but it was really the context that I was feeding the model with in real time in order for it to do the task. And so I realized that a pivotal change, it's on how we craft these memories. What is the information in context that we want to pass to the agent in order to do the task properly? And how does the system evolve as things move forward, and user maybe start clicking on these links, and search engines start crawling these pages. And so I realized that memory was really, the underlying element of success for my AI agents.
Yeah, and so memory, and when we think of memory, like you think of RAM and we're and the computer memory, but also human memory and the different kinds of memory, like short term, long term, and then you talk about there's three kinds of main buckets of kinds of memories. Can you talk a little bit about that and how and kind of start to draw the parallels between human memory and how this is manifesting in these AI architectures?
Yeah. So of course, we as human have short-term memory and long-term memory, and the same applies to an AI system. Short-term memory, it's traditionally represented by the so-called context window of a language model. And of course, different systems have different context window. If I choose to build an AI agent with a model like Gemini, I would leverage on a 2 million tokens context window. And if I manage to use, for instance, Grok, I will have 1 million token. Whether with ChatGPT, the context window shrinks and gets down to 128,000 tokens. So the short-term memory, it's translates to in context for language models. Now the long-term memory can be a knowledge base, in our case a knowledge graph, or search, a web index of information that it's published on the web, and it's crawled and indexed with a modern search engine. Now, when starting to do this exercise, when I realized that in order to make my AI smarter, it wasn't really about the best model, but it was about the context. I started to study how the brain works. And of course, the brain, as we can simplify things and talk about old brain and new brain, or system one and system two. And I focus on memory, that it's a function of the neocortex. And I found a very beautiful framework in a book titled 1000 Brain Theory by Jeff Hawkins. And in this conceptual framework of how human memory works, I found a lot of similarities with the work that we were doing with our marketing ontologies and SEO ontology. Because the brain, in order to, for example, describe, a glass of water, would create memory by using cortical columns. Imagine these are like spaghetti into our neocortex, and each one of these column, it's creating a representation of the world, of the glass of water in that case. And of course, there is the tactile feeling. There is the what I'm perceiving with my sight. The smell, the context in which I'm holding my glass of water, and each column independently, it's creating a knowledge representation. And the different knowledge representation then converge by voting into a unified understanding of the glass, and that would create the memory, and it's living because it's working by predicting what's going to happen next. If I turn it on the right, maybe the water will go down. And if I move it close to the mouth, maybe I just want to drink. And so memory, it's essential in the way in which we as human learn and adapt to the environment. And therefore it should have been, it is becoming quite significant elements of current AI system. And so as a designer of AI system, I realized that memory was the thing. It wasn't really about just training the model, but it was really about feeding it with the right memory. And the right memory, of course, it's encapsulated into the pre-training. For example, the model learns, during pre-training about all sorts of things. The entire web becomes, part of its memory. But then the model keeps learning when it interacts with us in context. And so, the way in which the model differentiates itself, it's really by the way in which memory are built and consumed by these systems.
Yeah, that's as you're talking about this, I'm picturing these memories just kind of like floating around, but they're, like you said, they're a form of knowledge representation. And so, and I'm also a lot of jumbled thoughts in my head as I think about this. Like when you talk about those cortical columns, like each of those is like an attribute or a facet of the thing you're talking about. And together they give you this impression of what a glass is. How does that, and that's a really fascinating look at how the human brain works. And I'm kind of inferring from what you say, like how that manifests in these architectures. But how does that look in terms of, like you said, you talked about the context window versus, and then how the memory, like, and those two kind of working together very much like Kahneman systems 1 and 2 kind of thinking. How does it come together with the architecture? Like I'm still trying to get my head around like how you stitch together these bits of knowledge into and both knowledge and then the sort of the systems one side of it, the vectorized sort of proximity things that are floating around as well. How does this come together? Yeah.
In layman's term, AI, it's about knowledge representation. Solving the AI challenge to build intelligent machines, it's a knowledge representation problem. Now, one thing that we learned so far, even in our direct experience, is that a given entity, an object, much like the multifaceted representation in our cortical columns, can be represented with discrete facts. How much water do I have in the glass, and what material the glass is built on. But then there is something that it's more nuanced. What is my feeling when I approach a glass of water in that specific point in time? And so this can be represented in a continuum, in an embedding form. And so right now in our knowledge graph, we represent entities with both triples and vectors. And this is very similar to how, of course, for example, perplexity would represent knowledge. Perplexity shines on, finding up-to-date information using its vector-based search. And so it's primarily focused on getting, real-time updates. But of course, if I want to, buy a pair of shoes, I would rarely rely on perplexity because it doesn't have in its, infrastructure and architecture, a shopping graph like the grounded Gemini 2.0 Flash has. And of course, a giant shopping graph like what Google has built over the years gives to its AI the advantage of having a very specific memory for tackling, transactional intents.
Yeah, that gets into also like at the, again, like for a marketer or anybody consuming this kind of knowledge on the web, like understanding like the capabilities and limitations of any one model. Like I've already played a fair amount with the tooling that lets you, pick which model you're going to use. And I've just been doing a kind of willy-nilly to experiment with like whatever people are talking about in the media. But now I'm thinking that like we need like a knowledge graph with all the information about all the various models, so that you can pick like if you're shopping, you would never use this model, but you'd always use that one. So.
Yeah, I mean, everything that is transactional and entity-based, requires a specific understanding and an amount of high-quality data that Google has. That, for example, for shopping items that Amazon has. So we can expect, to have model from Amazon excel at transactional intents. We don't go right now on ChatGPT to ask where to get the coffee the next day, simply because the local entity database that currently ChatGPT has, it's very limited, and God knows where it's coming from. It's a combination of what Yelp and whatever it's grasping in real time from Google or Bing, but it's not reliable enough for us to count on it. But for example, ChatGPT is very personal in the relationship. ChatGPT has been first with Gemini to build memory from one conversation to another, and so it can recall what we have discussed in the past. You can ask to ChatGPT to draw a picture of you, and based on all the conversation that he has, it would create a beautiful profile that would be most likely accurate, based on all the conversation that he had with you. So it's very personal. And Perplexity has no personality, has no personal contact with you. It only, works extremely well with its embedding vectors and ability to trigger search for giving you, the latest updates. So the memory, it's different. A system like Grok has a giant context, like Grok has a 1 million token. So within the same conversation it will have a great recall of what you have said, in the different channels. But the strength of Grok is its access to the live, social media data of X. Therefore, if I want to build the memory for Grok, as long as I have users, engaging on Grok, that was my Milan experiment. What is the memory that Grok uses the most? It's this, social media access to X. And so if I create engagement on X, the model in real time will react.
Yeah. And as you're talking there, something you just said triggered this memory, and I want to make sure we get to this, is that in addition to like that kind of highest level distinction between short-term and long-term memory, there's kinds of memories. And
Right.
what you're saying, like, and those distinctions between like procedural and semantic and wait, what's the third one? But the different kinds of memory, what are the implications for those in these architectures? Like the temporal one too. Tell me
Episodic.
about that. Episodic. Thank you. Yeah.
Yep. So AI agents rely on different memory frameworks. So for me, when building, an AI that automates SEO, my memory is built on this ontology that we called SEO ontology. So this is the blueprint of how we envision, memory for an AI agent that does SEO. So depending on the task, an agent will need to access to different memory types. So one memory type is the semantic type of memory. So the memory that, for example, Gemini will need when I ask to find, the best pair of running shoes. A semantic memory can be organized in a graph in the form of entities, and of course, it can, the retrieval of a semantic memory can be done with a combination of, vectors and attributes and triples. So we can much likely access semantic memory by combining, the triples in the graph with the vectors. The episodic memory, it's, the things that the system has learned, whether it has learned things about you or it has learned things because, there has been an evolution over time. We could represent an episodic memory with an event ontology. Right. On that day, Andrea spoke about his love for mountains. On the other day, Andrea mentioned his wife. So time-based memory help the agent understand, that there is a flow in time. Imagine that the limitation of a language model is that it's designed to be stateless. So after pre-training, it's everything that has been learned, it's encoded into these billions of parameters that cannot be adapted dynamically. So in order to make the system dynamic, we have to feed it with memory. So episodic memory, it's, for example, the memory that in our case, when we build our agent, would allow the agent to remember that that workflow was successful with that type of site, right? So with episodic memory, in our world of marketing automation, the system learns what worked and when. Okay, and so it can learn. And of course, imagine that these systems are lively updated. So if data comes from the Google Search Console about people requesting a page using a query, I immediately bring this into the knowledge graph and feed it into the agent. So that memory is dynamic and helps the system to adapt and evolve, much like the human brain. The other memory, it's procedural. How do I do certain things? How do I make pasta? How do I build internal links? There are sequences, there are steps. And, if I have to represent it in a graph, I would possibly rely on a class like a schema how-to, where I can describe the steps that needs to be taken for achieving a specific goal. So semantic, episodic, and procedural memory are the three types of memories that these systems use. This is important for us when we build the system, but it's also important for us to understand when we interact with something like ChatGPT, we're not interacting with the language model, we're interacting with a complex architecture that has memory. And of course, ChatGPT excels with episodic memory, as we mentioned, because it can keep track of the conversation. But for example, lacks, semantic memory when it comes down to products or local businesses.
Yeah, as you say that, I'm really curious now about even among advanced practitioners in AI architecture construction, a lot of this will be new or different from the way they've been doing things. This is it or has memory been considered in architectures now, or is this truly a new thing that folks are going to have to adapt to and work into their products?
So in the world of autonomous agents, it's becoming more common to think about, what is the memory framework that you're going to use and how a knowledge graph can help. Of course, this was very close to my area of expertise because we work in graph technologies. And as we started to add the vectors into the knowledge graph, I realized that it was just the perfect infrastructure for creating a memory layer for AI. But then, I also look on the other side. I look at, okay, how can my client be more visible on, conversation? How can I help the brands using our solution to be more present when, interacting with the large language model or an AI system? So I started to think, okay, well, we can't work on search intent only because that's for the humans, but we're directly interacting with agents. And so based on my experience, I started to think of marketing as a memory creation process.
That's really, and so this sounds key because theoretically 2025 is going to be the year of the agent and agentic architectures and all these things. Do you see this new memory capability as key to that?
Oh yeah. I mean, there's no way to build an intelligent system other than by providing the model with an understanding of the world, a way of reasoning about the task, and access to memory, whether, in the form of a web index, in the form of a knowledge graph, in the form of a knowledge base, or a combination of all three things.
Yeah.
And so, the idea of an external knowledge base that was introduced with the retrieval augmented generation to solve the problem of the knowledge cutoff of language model has evolved in a way richer scenario where, these non-parametric memory are becoming strategic for the success of that specific agent.
Yeah, that's this seems really well. We should check back in 6 months and see how this is all panning out, and I assume your whole workflow will have grown even more by then. But hey, Andrea, I can't believe it. We're coming up close to time already. But before we wrap up, is there anything you'd like to revisit from the conversation, or just make sure we share before we wrap up?
I think that what is important is that I want people to start focusing on the importance of creating memories for their brands. And I want people to start looking at, understanding deeply how a language model perceive, their brands and product and services. Because as we move forward, I don't expect to see static content anymore. I expect to see, an hyper-personalized level of conversation where, in the end, memory is going to last, much like, the tone of voice of the brand is going to last. And so I really want people to start focusing on creating good memories for AI in order to protect their brand values.
Oh boy, that's so interesting. There's a whole other conversation we need to have with Jason Barnard about branding and stuff. But well, very, very cool. One very last thing, Andrea. If folks want to follow you or connect online, what's the best place to find you?
Yeah, I mean LinkedIn. I'm there as Andrea Volpini. We do have also quite rich newsletter from WordLift on LinkedIn, and X. I'm Cyber Andy. It's a little bit shameful for me to be there, but I'm still there. I'm also on Blue Sky, I think. But yeah, I don't spend too much time there, to be honest. But yeah.
But I hope you grabbed the Cyber Andy handle at each of those.
Yes, I did. I'm there as Cyber Andy.
Excellent. Well, thanks so much, Andrea. It's always great to talk, and this was a particularly fun one.
That's good. Thanks, Larry.
For show notes and to sign up for our newsletter, visit our website at knowledgegraphinsights.com. And please rate and review us on your favorite podcast platform. Thank you for listening.